Ije mo aha Allahu adeboy fen anuncho dro loke mobo na lo manche kujumo gbile no le peji moni woja le non pe ingo wo bio yili ke bo mo fen kejo wombila ke kan ne kliki jo mo edro mo ke mo na machine ke bagbalo Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam no e me fen wale na shie Islam ne mene bine Islam e ba shongo e bi wombi Allahu ke kan ne kuro ke Islam tempo no eni water fire e wo mo eje hinu wo yi mo hu ye ha wo shifi mo eje keje ba che wo hu echewo bemi ni woni chumwe kpakpa ese hi agbene Islam ejelengam ja salamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh noji ngamo ni nke nga to ibule efen take owie ni se ochile woke wonkwe conditions and pillars of Islam ake namoji moni Hajj fe mone ifi uti ke hale o wagbala no mi agbene pillar ni Hajj de nche dumono oba fele fa ke idamoni bi igwe no ka ke Hajj klenklen no ji no na chola ke ihram no ni ji enyoji no na chola ke tawaf no ni ji etenji no na chola ke sai ni no ni ji ejwe ji no na chola ke wukufu arafa ni abaya arafa ifi ake oba ko no ni ji ihram men oba gbala mi wo wie bia ke ka ke ihram je papa enyo lo mama enyo ni nuwe eke mo eheke no ni eke ha enwe mgbe je no keke shin eye noni ihram ne damoshi ha mise ochile wobakwe no na achola ake mawakit neji stations hey nike mukoshe iba abote ihram mi ejeme hey no washa amro na eji ihram keji abote mi ni chumu ekume no ba anyo tu ni chumu ekume hu ye ni onye no tu mise ochile ye wi mo mi nchie komata shinmene wojegbe wo hisen bona afi ni nibi ni onyen ofi keji oye ihram mi wogbala mi odugba ke nibi ni obanyo fi keje oye ihram mi wokeno hu ahwi jela. We are most grateful to Almighty Allah for yet another opportunity to meet you on this platform. As most of you will recall, last week we started with conditions and pillars of Islam. That was the first sitting. And I indicated that Hajj actually hinges on 4 pillars, without which your Hajj is null and void. And what are those pillars? Just for purposes of reminding ourselves or recapping what we did last week. So we said the 4 pillars are Ihram. And what is Ihram? We explained that it is not those 2 towels that you use to cover yourself alone, but it actually symbolizes the intention you have formed, you have made for the performance of the Hajj, or for the performance of Umrah, or for the performance of both, as the case may be. We also looked at Tawaf. We said a little about that by way of explanation and the kinds or the types of Tawaf that one could undertake. Inshallah, today we may go into detail to look at what you can do if you are in a state when we are performing the Tawaf, and what other things you cannot do as well. Then we spoke about Sa'i. We couldn't explain what it means, but if you are able to complete the pillars of Hajj, then we'll look at how Umrah is performed, in which case we'll have time to talk about what Sa'i means, and then Wukufu Arafah, that is standing on the plains of Arafah. So these are the pillars upon which Hajj hinges. If you leave out any of them, then it means your Hajj is null and void. So now let's look at the prohibitions of Ihram. So manyeme, temoko ye Ihram mini ji ni bi ni enyen ni efe. Ni bi ni enyen efe ye efa. Shin oti ni yo mi mahala ba fi nyumako ni machon. Klenklen no ji. Moni ebote Ihram mi. Enyen ike iwu lo enga anabole. Enyen ehwe ina taflache enyen imomo emi. Ni agbene shemo enfin ni kebole namuba enyen ike hifatalo. Ahwe na kan hwe mo tetepoe sane gba ni nyon ike bole namuba ne kegbo mone ni iyo Ihram emi isaake imo ehilo ehiyo ikeje na kan ni fe mom. Noni ji enyo moni ye Ihram agbule ake ebehebe ni iba afi nuku ni kenyumbo tu igbala mo ba be no ni ba ton nyumbo egbeko no ta flache yo ni ke ji na le blanchin le ba nye bankele te ja ke ji nyemini ni blanchin le ba nye bankele te isa ni makwele ke akono hinme na kai no na kan yo ehu ke ye ihram ni nanunkwe isa ni iba kwele ke akono hinme noni ji iten moni ye ihram ebe igba wane igba kada be mi ni ihram ebe no fe no ni ke be ba hu iba mo ke ba jem bi aboni ihram me noni ji gbe moni ye ihram me no fe no ni akpe ni so chile mba wie bi ake ka ke yo ihram ebele tomo hia no ni amehe mama enyo na elu papa enyo na ni ke mu he ni ke ku fit me ke twa akwaja ya no bele na kan shi atale fe atale ni ke ewu ni atale emi nka je atale ni imole ibanye ewu na kan atale in the case of nuwe ibehebe ake ibawo nuko ni na kan ni akpe tomo shirt boni eyole ne tomo trouser be mini wole bona achole agbene tumo jalba boni wole ni eyole ne ine menfen enyen efite bampo ahun ni ibawo socks lo ibawo panty pieto ye mama ni ike moehe ibawo pieto yeshi moni ebote ihrami ne ken maja ni bi ne fen agua hale noni ji enumu moni ye ihrami enyen ewu atale ni ake ojema lo anuatre ewu mi ni ke atale ehun wokola ke mama ni ebue enyen ni eshi anuatre na lo ojema ke wo mi ni ji ihrame ina menfen agule ke be mi ni eyo eni wochola ke mi kate ni be mi ni ejuehe ni ba fi ni data eme ekwe deodorant lo no ni kepe ngashi lo ewu spray ke wehe mumu dani no se dani ebote ihrame nuele na chinku behe shibi aboni ebote ihrame me neke maja ni bi ne enyen ifike ashi ibajem. So what are some of the prohibitions of ihram? There are several of them, but I just want to enumerate about 10 of those prohibitions. The first one is sexual relations, including intercourse with your spouse. Whilst you are in the state of ihram, it is forbidden for you. And any act that can lead to sexual intercourse, such as kissing, caressing, and all those things, are forbidden, even to the extent that the conversation that can lead to sexual intercourse taking place is prohibited for the one who is in a state of ihram. Secondly, it is also forbidden for the one who is in a state of ihram to do anything that will incur the displeasure, the anger of Allah. Anything that leads to disobedience of Allah is prohibited for the one who is in a state of ihram. It includes looking at a marriageable man or a marriageable woman with lust and looseness. What it means is that, if you read Quran chapter 4, verse 22 to 24, the Quran spells out the kind of women you cannot marry. So if I see a lady who is not my mom, who is not my daughter, who is not my sister, and the marriage can take place between that woman and I am not supposed to look at her with lust whilst I am in the state of ihram. So is the woman who is also in a state of ihram prohibited, forbidden from looking at a man that she can marry with lust. Then, thirdly, it is forbidden for the one who is in a state of ihram to dispute, to quarrel with some other people, or to engage in any unlawful, any unbeneficial useless argument. Whilst in a state of ihram, you are forbidden from doing that. Then fourthly, you are also forbidden from wearing any stitched clothes, such as the jalbab, the gown, you know, that we wear, the turban, even socks, even underwear or panties, as the case may be, a shirt, a trouser, and so on. Whilst you are in a state of ihram as a man, you are not supposed to go into all those years. And then the final one I mentioned, which is the fifth point, which is a prohibition as far as you being in a state of ihram is concerned, is to wear a scented cloth or a cloth that they have applied perfume on it. And you know, in the case of men, the reason why I'm using scented clothes is that, as I indicated, in the case of women, they are allowed to wear any dress that is very loose on them. It is not transparent. It is not too fitting or tight on them. But in the case of men, they use those two pieces of towel to cover themselves. So that is why I decided to use the word scented clothes, because a lady will say, okay, in my case, I don't use those two towels, so I'm not covered. No, you are all covered. So you cannot apply. And you know, even as far as Islam is concerned, a lady is not allowed to use perfume. So that is something we know already. But in the case of men, if you had applied the deodorant, the perfume on your body before you took on your ihram and assumed that state, there is nothing wrong with that. But whilst you are in a state of ihram, you cannot apply the perfume. So let us take note of that. So you are not supposed to use a scented cloth as you are in that state. So my name, noni ji ekpa ni agu keha moni eyo ihra menji enyen efigbala kewu mekumaten ni anyen afigbala awu ikemukuten be aboni eyo ihra me ona ke blanchin lele nukuni nyumbonsumo ni ikesroto ba adesan ke kului ate ye woni fi mo me si bi aboni oyo ihra me onyo figbala hanke yuko whether me hu ye ihra me lo mbe me onyo figbala hanke yuko na kan no me hu nye ma figbala ma wununku ke yuko te bi aboni iyo ihra me na kan di mla ni kan no ne ji pa oji onyen oyamle lo ba aka ka oyagbom bi mi ni oyo ihra me da bi ene me fe moni yo ihra me enyen ni ifi bi aboni oyo ihra me onyen ni oji owana onyen ni oku itwei onyen ni osho ngashi lo omenshi twei ni yoje onyen oshe ko ejake ene me fe noku ni kofi no eji obukejo ihra me obi aboni oyo ihra me onyen okake ofi ine na kan no nji na hu ekwe keji ohie hara mehe minchon eni kaba yo lo masjid yo onyen okake okumochi lo ofamochi keji ekuyara ni sanola ke be mi ne kembla ne be beleton woni bia na kote alle mi agbele masjid mi kete show na kan bi echi ke ni bi bolele ewo onyon kake oyo ya kun eku lo yo aji ne na kan no be aboni oyo ihrami no ni wo chole blofo mi ake gloves onyon wu eku ni no ni wo chole ake nikap oye islami yo ni ye ihrami ifi na kan ni eku na kan no bu moni oyo ihrami mi onyen ni ukenoku aha oyite to boni ntabie ni mbufa ene bi aboni ye ihrami mi inye mafi na kan ni bi eku wo ene me fe agbala mi achonwo wona afi ni ke wo ihrami wo le gbejiano to ni yo he oni wo ke na kan mla lo gbejiano to achuni eke ba afi se na mu ihawo. So the 5 other prohibitions I want to mention in addition to the previous 5 I mentioned are: 1, whilst you are in a state of ihram, of course this is the 6th point, you cannot conduct a marriage for someone or for your own self. What it means is that I cannot officiate a marriage ceremony for some people whilst I am in a state of ihram. neither can one be conducted for me or on my behalf whilst I'm in a state of ihram. It is prohibited for you to do so. The next point I want to talk about is that you cannot go on hunting whilst you are in a state of ihram. You cannot do so. It is prohibited for the one who is in a state of ihram. Of course, you cannot clip your nail or you cannot cut your fingernails, as we say it. You cannot shave your head or any other hair on your body whilst you're in a state of ihram, because by so doing, it lifts the obligations of ihram on you. Because if you are fortunate to look at Umrah, you will notice that by the end of my presentation on Umrah, I will say, then you need to shave your hair or clip or cut your fingernails, and that will lift the obligations of ihram from you. So the moment you do any of these things, it means if you have not finished with your Umrah, if you have not finished with your Hajj, you've actually terminated it because you have done what you are not supposed to do. Again, you cannot uproot any tree or plant around the Kaaba whilst you are in that state. You cannot, again, the 10th point, you cannot even put on a glove. In the case of women, they cannot put on niqab because all those things are forbidden whilst you are in a state of ihram. In the case of men, I have earlier on mentioned turban, but at that time I was looking at something else. I was looking at sewn clothes. In the case of a man, you cannot even put on your cap, your hat like I have mine on. Whilst you are in a state of ihram, you cannot do any of these things. So these are the prohibitions of ihram. So my name, kawokwe ni bi ni agu be mi ni mokoye ihram ni mini ji ni bi ni ibanye ni ifi mani yake ene mefen sele wonkwe pilae ni hajj damono ni ihram no mi wogbala ne wo amno ne wo shehe ni wo ba akwe ni bi ni gbe mo ake moni ye ihram ni ibanye ni ifi eko meji keji to boni imowachi ye nene ni otu oni ofi wachi lo mowachi bona afi ni uke kweta ma ake mle twa enyehu mgbe twa enyehu ye ni nke fun hin ake ma fe mi na agba kokora abehi oba anye ni wachi oke fi onide na agba kokora abehi ekwe ohimbe igbo na enewo ahabo imbe glass low spectacle no tawani owo imbe glass ne na agba kokora abehi oba anye ni obu imbe glass lowo imbe glass na agba kokora behi hunu enchu oye ihrami lo nubonne no hie akatanywa lo umbrella ni otawo ohoshishin na agba kokora abe oba anye no ohoshishin ifite konoko ye ihrami onyehu ni ekwe hunu na awa lo na choko no tawa ni oyajo he etueshi lo ama choko ni afi no kotuma agbako ye hin ni otawo oyataje no ojo he bi aboni oyo ihram ni na agbako kra abehi obanyo yataje ni ojo he nwi ake onyo bufa be mi no oyo ihram shina aboni ohin ojachu no ofin ojachu na ofin obanye no owo no tele na agbako kra abehi bi aboni oyo ihram ekwe onyanyo nwo he kakao nyanyo esa akọ ya fa eja keje na kan ifi na agba ihabo ni ote ake oya fa onyanyo na ehun na agba kokora abehi ene mefen ni bi ni obanye ni ofi ekwe komobo ni otawo owa mojeme bi abo no yo ihram ene mefen keje ofi na agba kokora abe ekwe he no yo akeka ya mle na onunfun ebe ba kombo na tetete ibanye de chembo keji ogbele bi aboni oyo ihram na agba kokora abehi ifite konoko ye ihram no yo me ekwe no ya haje ukobi kote beke etu ewa ko ke tabi ibi o ke ka fe na efite na ejeshi wa anyo folema wa agbalema fio no fite ihram no yo ake mine wo yo ihram ni o ya fe ine yo ni eye ihram eba anye ni etuni bi fe ni atun ye hajj gbejano tuemi lo ye umra gbejano tuemi ja tawaf pe enyin ifi wo mini ji tawafe makwe tawafe boni iyole ke gbejano to ye enehum ye Islam. So what are some of the permissible acts if one is in a state of ihram? Those things you can do and it doesn't take away anything from your thawab, your spiritual reward for the hajj or the umrah that you are undertaking. So I said, like, you can see me, I have put on a wristwatch. You want to put on a watch which will help you to know the time. There is nothing wrong with putting on a wristwatch. There is nothing wrong with that. I have a problem with my sight. And so because of that, I use a spectacle. There is nothing wrong with you wearing your spectacle in the state of ihram. It doesn't spoil anything. It doesn't take away anything from you if you put on your spectacle whilst you are in a state of ihram. If you decide to carry your baggage on your head whilst you are in a state of ihram, it doesn't take away anything from you. Your ihram is perfect. Your umrah or your hajj that you are performing, as far as the ihram and the conditions are concerned, it is allowed. You have a wound, a sore, and you have bandaged it. It is permitted for you. You can do that. It is raining or the scorching sun is too hurtful. So you decide to use an umbrella in that state of ihram. You are allowed. And there is nothing, absolutely nothing wrong with that because it does not take away anything from your blessing, your sawab. And so it is allowed whilst you are in that state. Again, you have a tooth that is hurting. You have a toothache. So you decided to see a dentist and they decide to remove it or to pluck it out or to work on it. It doesn't take away anything from your sawab. Your sawab, your blessings is there. Your ihram is still intact and the reward for you in that state is still intact for you. So again, maybe you have an itching skin, so you decide to scratch. It doesn't take away anything from you, and that is also allowed. You see a harmful animal, such as a snake, such as scorpion, and you decide to kill it in the process so that it doesn't cause harm to you. It is permitted, it is allowed, and it doesn't take away anything from you. And finally, if you decide that maybe when you were going, you went along with your child, and the child is misbehaving, and you decide to discipline your child by scolding him or her, by beating him or her, of course, not to the extent that you cause bodily harm to the child. It is permitted, it is allowed. And I said finally, but let me talk about the women. So in the case of a woman who is in her menses or is seeing her postnatal blood, she can perform every act of the Hajj or Umrah except that she cannot do tawaf. So what is the tawaf? I explained that last week, but today too, inshallah, I'll look at that. Oh, so my name, you any equi wami, lo ifo, fomo se lani huole, eyemin chocholo, lo equeta flache, ete haje ni ya kwe wami ejeme. Ani iba chun haji ni chumolo, ni hani matcho ne kan hegbe ne no ne nke ne kan bi mo ne abi ni lelo epana omo Sheikh Ibn Usaymin rahimahullah me ameji na amumwe abi ake anikeji yuti hajj ni esusun ake ekwe hajj ni chumo ekume ke ibikane be hie ewo bona fe ni taflache wa menkun lo etwan ase ya eka ha hajj gbejano to ese ya agbalashin anikechu fakoye ne ba ko lo ba nu lo ak ba gbule nínú ba ha ni etwan ase ya ba agbalashi fio ne ikegbe na kan ni chumo na ani ba anye ni ifi na kan lo Sheikh Ibn Usaymin rahimahullah ke iba anye ni ifi na kan keji chufa ni akbale ni ko lo akba gbule ifi nuku ni ba fi hawmu na agba ihale na kan yuwe wose ekwe nwele ba anye ni ifi na kan bona afi ni etwan ase ya ase agbalashi ni enye kegbe ne wo kamuko ye yuni iti haje lo ifi umra iba anye fi no fen no jatawaf pe enye ifi ina gbalo Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam fatalo neji Aisha radiyallahu anha ay hajj beje anoto emi ni ikun ewa mi wo ifo idola ke wonye magbe ni chumo na lo gbalo ma se ke la ke na mi nse ina enyumbo ni ake iba na iba na kan bia no ko be no wa anyo fe chimuwe hajj ni chumo fe iba anye fi fe ja tawaf pe ni ke tawaf itamo solemo tawaf itamo solemo sroto pe ni yo menji tawaf keji afiye anya ayo si solemo keji asole awi ni kenke solemo je dua do obi nyumbo ni mention salat ake nyumbo jamu ye islam ni no keji afiye awi ye me shimwe tawafe keji afiye anya awi wo kwe tawafe ke egbenya to we koni agbene wo kwe boni afiole keji abole kaaba da ncheja tawafe ji ni ababole kaaba kai ma kenyi se ochile imfile fan ye bia ke tawafe wo no na tola ke tawaful kudum eji tomoni oje Ghana ni ote Maka untwan ko she Saudi Arabia usually bona fe ni fe mele aboja ke Ghana bi titiri ji meni nkebio ona keke ate haje aya Medina clean Medina ya ifata hajj gbejano to we shihe ye ne keju te jomo yam to example ke o ya sole ye gbalo masjid mi achon bo jomo ni yo mi ake eminchi fe do sole ye koklo achon bo ko te Jerusalem eminchi mo bone yo achon bo keji ote harame de nche ni ji Maka ke wo she ziara ye hajj gbejano to we mi magbala no me wo bo ketafono wo ona ke ushe jeme aya kuba keji no je compose ene me fen ziara ne ifata hajj ni chumoy kuba aji clean heni ama masjid ye Islam be mi ni gbalo Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam ete Medina wo ko te kuba no afi na fla enyo eni o ye jomo tomoko ne fi umra ne nyumo ehi jomo ni yo me ne wo bo hama ba bi mo ni to wo ona ka ma ayo gbe ten lo no ye Medina dane amejo jeme ke ba Maka o keji ajejeme na ba Maka no shegbo ato he hotel no ko ni bi amamoshi no te harame ake o yo ya fi umra clean tawafe ni ufio be mi ni ushejeme acho no ake tawaful kudum dani inese we no chola ake tawaful ifada ji haje denche na afio itawafe na afio ni keji ate Arafa na ya wo Muzdalifa ni gbiniji nyuma ate Mina back ate Jamrat na ya do ba fe na kan tawafe lo oye 12 day lo 13 day ye Mina no so ba Maka no ba fe na kan tawafe acho no ake tawaful ifada ekwe with time ko ba agbala dan no na chola ake tawaful wada ji keji ugbi haji ni chumo fena ni obashi teku se ke ya uma na agbe tawafe na ya fio na ke kaba yo she no jinu na chola ke tawaful wada dani agbene we no chola ke tawafu tatawu niji ekwe oye Maka ma mi olu nyegbeku na asen when no te harame he decide ako mintu ani mafi tawaf na kan tawaf e boni iyole ne. So, our distinguished listeners, what am I driving at the moment? So, a lady, as I indicated earlier, can perform all the rites of Hajj and Umrah if she's even in a state of menstruation, except in the case of Tawaf, which is like worship. Why can't she do so? You know, in Islam, whenever you talk about something, you need evidence to back your position. So the position is that when Aisha radiallahu anha, the wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when she experienced her menstruation during the Hajj, she was crying. And then the Prophet had to console her and tell her that, oh, you can do everything, every rite of the Hajj, you can do it, except Tawaf, because Tawaf is like prayer. And the difference between Tawaf and Salat is that in the case of Tawaf, you can speak, you can talk whilst you are performing the Tawaf. But in the case of Salat, you cannot speak if you are in that state. So you know that also in the case of Salat, if a woman is in her menses, she cannot perform Salat. So in the case of a lady who is in her menses too, she cannot perform the Tawaf, and that is the condition. I also explained the last week about the different types of Tawaf. Then I said we have what is known as the Tawaful Kudum. That is the arrival Tawaf. And I indicated that when you first enter Makkah, whether you are coming through the Jeddah airport, whether you went to Medina and you came to Makkah, and then you went to the Haram, the first tawaf, that is going around the Kaaba that you do, that is what is known as the Tawaful Kudum. Then there is also what is known as the Tawaful Ifada. The Tawaful Ifada is the tawaf which is a pillar in Hajj. And that one only takes place from the 10th day of Zulhijjah. So, you know, today is 29th day of Shawwal. So what it means is that from tonight, you can begin looking for the crescent of the new moon. If it is sighted today, it means tomorrow, inshallah, becomes the first day of Zulqa'dah. If it is not sighted, then it means Sunday rather becomes the first day of the month of Zulqa'dah. So in the month of Zulhijjah, from the 10th, after you spent the night in Muzdalifah, the 10th day you come to Mina again, Jamrat, you do the stoning. After the stoning, you can go straight to Makkah and do your tawaf, which will be the tawaf al-ifada. Or you can wait after the 12th or the 13th when you are done with the rite in Mina and you go back to Makkah and then you perform the tawaf of Hajj, which is known as the tawaful ifada. So that is it. Then we also have the tawaful wada. Tawaful wada is the tawaf that you perform when you are done with all the rites of Hajj and you are set within the next 12 to 24 hours. You are leaving Makkah to your country of origin. Then you perform that tawaf. Then of course there's also what is known as the tawaful tatawu. That is whilst you are still in Makkah, as and when you get the opportunity of going to the Haram, you decide to perform voluntary tawaf. All those things are there. So these are just a few of the things you can do whilst, and the things you cannot do whilst you are performing your tawaf. First of all, you should know that the one performing tawaf must be in a state of purification. He or she should be clean of all the minor and major impurities as far as Islam is concerned. You know, one of the major impurities is where a woman is in a state of menstruation, or after a man had had sexual intercourse with the wife. You know, unless you take the bath, the ghusl, you cannot perform the tawaf, because as I indicated, tawaf is like prayer. That is what the Prophet said. And if you are in that state of condition, of course, you cannot perform salah. So if you cannot perform salah, it also follows that you cannot in that state perform the tawaf. Secondly, you must cover your aura, your nakedness. It should be covered from all other persons. It should not be seen by anyone. Thirdly, you should know that the tawaf must be performed in 7 consecutive sessions. Unless, let's say, you are performing the tawaf and then the call for prayer, azan, is made and they are praying the obligatory prayer. Wherever you have gotten to, you stop there and pray with them, and then after the prayer, you continue with your tawaf. That is what is done. And when you start the tawaf, the 4th point I want to state is that the Kaaba should be on your left. The Kaaba should be on your left. And then you move in that direction, in that anti-clockwise direction. Then thereafter, whatever there are to be known, let me translate this into Ghana because we are just running out of time. Then inshallah we'll continue next week. Oh, noni pena chonji tawa fe hen. Onye ni ofi bemi ni utaflache oku wame. Lo utaflache bemi ni bole na mwe boho ngate lo ko ute ni hechu moni yo ofiko. Isaake oye wudu hu dani obanye ni ofi neke tawa fe ne. Tawa fe hu isaake oha oyaya ochi oyaya ame. Ni ohiku ka ni me bana te fata he be mi no fi tawaf ne tawaf e otwan ke ka ba ye oni de bekugbe eja ke atwon eni obaje hie ye green light fi ake mmeno chika nyuma aso o wa kwebo ni afio umra eja ke no wo hye tawaf be sane wo ke no anye se keba we ibahi obekugbe ni obaje hie ko te a hu no ba hye me nanu wa fi rabbana atina fi dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina azabana wa fi le shipa wo sande chala no ye ni ko fi ko ya johe ye ko bo ko fi ko dabi the only time pe no ba anyo fo me be mi no fi agi ache azan ache ikama ehye solemo efe he no hye obawa ko ni osole ko sole ogbena keke obacha otawa fe no eni o hye je do yo aje hyehe ikunwo alaji salim efe ake no obe fa nke ba bi ko ni ke ni bi mo ko me dan wo ba pala san ko ni ake ba ke ko hu be keke meno chi oba cha no wo kwebo ne afio
bono wo ba village o ba da wo municipal chief ma me shi ke heni ike wo e share ni bi won fe ke na ke sharife ngba na fe shi meno chi ke do fe wo no libi fe ni yo me fe ke e ba bi eja ke obi e fe bi ni aka wa ke ake muslim se la ne ogba ni ba ne o ba fe ado wo ha wo nyeminu Bilal Malinai ye la modern mosque auditorium na mi agona aka wa ke madrasa e ya no da ho e da ho ba lebi mejine hu yashi shane murekumi bi ene jeni gbegmo woni wo ke oni fe mo fe kin abawa woni ngo yomo ha waji la da de ko to municipal chief imam Sheikh Imam Alhaj Abdur Rashid Nii Anyetei Odoi Atsem agbene DJ Bangula ji ta councilor sa ha oni mo yomo fe wo kwa nyi ni chere Henry Adepopo Lampo leji wo senior technician pe me ni ba mo libi mi fe kin o shede mi ha woni ji camera men ke libi ni mene agbene wa na wa odugbanji be mo ni do camera se ha waji oni mi no Ibrahim Usan agbene Sharif yemu leji moni iji moni ikudo le bona feno feno aya no jugo ami Alhaji Ahmed Salin so wa minji moni matashi ni ye ni fe mo fe kin ayo chame o ba shi ni ke Islam hejele ngamo iji assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.